Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to the CEWT podcast. And thank you for joining us this wonderful morning. I'm Jason Batalden. I'm the Assistant Director at Idaho State University's Continuing Education and Workforce Training, which we lovingly refer to as CEWT. We work within the College of Technology and provide non-credit educational classes and workforce training to our community here in Southeast Idaho. This podcast is a part of our continuing outreach efforts to get our message out to the community abroad. Joining us today is Rabbi Devin Villarreal. He is an educational consultant by title, and I would say probably one of the most interesting people I've met recently. So I'm totally honored. Well, you should. I'm totally stoked about this conversation, and I'm excited where it'll go today. I was going to add this. I forgot that not only are you educational consultant and a very interesting fellow, you'll be teaching a class for us this fall.
Yeah, very excited about that.
Comparative Religions Class. Thank you. Our format will be conversational, and focus on our topic and guests for 20 minutes. And that clock started when I said welcome.
All right.
So no matter what, after 20 minutes, we will end the conversation and we'll wrap it up. So introduce yourself. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's a real joy.
And you've been, I don't want to steal your thunder, but you've been back and forth and back, and can I stay still new to the Southeast Idaho area?
Absolutely. We're definitely new here. My parents actually moved up here about 3 years ago, and we started visiting them, and eventually kind of life lined up in such a way that we made our own move up here, my wife and myself and our 5 kids. And so they've actually been up here for a couple of months. I've been going back and forth between here and California for the last little bit, but now I'm settling in, and one of the things I'm most excited about is getting prepared for this comparative religions class in the fall.
Right on. Yeah. So you've had a journey getting here. You said, okay. Yeah. Do you want to share it all?
Absolutely. For the last...
Because for me personally, I'm a transplant too, but I've been here 20 some odd years now, so I feel like I belong.
It's another home for you.
But I will say that in my life, I didn't ever point at a map at Southeast Idaho and said I wanted to live up here. Yeah. I'm very thankful I did. I'm not bashing Southeast Idaho at all, but it wasn't on my life plan when I was developing that when I was a young man many, many years ago.
Right. No, I hear that. So for the last 10 years, I've been working in Jewish education in what are called community Jewish day schools, which bring together people from a variety of Jewish backgrounds in terms of denominations, affiliation, and things like that. And the school is in Southern California, and our department, the Jewish Studies department, really kind of set out to help students be literate in their tradition, to help them participate in meaningful community, to have them really sort of claim their religious identity as their own, and also to help shape their moral character through their tradition. And interestingly enough, that last component was where we taught a comparative religions course in the high school. There was a deep feeling amongst the faculty that in the 21st century, to be a global citizen, it meant, yes, certainly being conversant and, again, having a sense of ownership about one's own religious tradition, but it also meant understanding other people's religious traditions and being able to engage and to be able to have respectful and thoughtful conversations around diversity in religion. And so that was something that was really exciting in that context to be teaching. My interest in religion goes back earlier. My undergraduate work at UCLA was in the study of religion. When the opportunity came up to move up here and thinking about, what would I would do, and having conversations with a lot of different people, we got the chance to sit down together, also with Gary, and we're able to, see that, there's an opportunity for this type of thing of comparative religious study.
Okay, so let's just jump into it. I mean, in today's culture, right, 2 things you don't talk about. Politics and religion, right? And I'm not going to I could spend hours probably bashing social media, but I'm an old guy, who could do that very easily.
Right.
But I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, the discussion, the dialogue of religion from two different backgrounds or two different faiths doesn't occur.
Right.
I mean, the dialogue doesn't occur. I mean, we'll
Right.
talk about religion all you want,
Right.
but the dialogue. So that's kind of what you're approaching. You're recognizing
Right.
the institution you came from, recognize, wait a minute, this dialogue needs to, and is it a modeling kind of idea? Like,
Yeah.
if we model how to talk about our religion with other people in a healthy, open way, maybe others will talk to us.
Yeah, I think that's a big piece of it. Modeling is always a critical part of education. Trying to think about what kind of templates and models can we put out there for people to have healthy discussions. A big piece of the course, which is also something that featured when we taught it in the high school as well, is helping people have a language. One of the things that's tough is just like, how do you even talk about this stuff without sounding offensive or critical? And so it's about developing a language. And so there's been some really great work done by people in universities across the country. In particular, there's a professor in the Northwest, I'm forgetting exactly where, named Dale Cannon. And what he did is he spent years and years studying religious traditions across the globe. And what he found out is that there are 6 ways of being religious that are common to all world religions. Things like devotion, things like intellectual inquiry, things like moral action, things like ritual performance. And what's nice about that model is that it helps us realize, as different as a particular manifestation of a different religion might seem to me, I can ask myself the question, well, is it that manifestation of ritual, which I also have? Is this really an expression of another's intellectual inquiry, which my tradition also has? So it kind of helps us get to the underlying structures to be able to talk about it in a way that we can find some common ground. And again, it isn't, we all think we're right? We all think that we have the truth about things.
Well, it's faith for a reason, right?
Yes.
I mean, we believe for a reason. And as faith is, I don't want to say, there's this component to, we have to believe. And believe sometimes goes without, I'm not going to use the word rational, because it has to be rational.
Yeah.
But there's a leap involved.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's no point in taking that leap. There's no point if I'm not, if I don't have that faith, I have to take that leap.
Right.
So why take a leap if I don't think it's right?
Right, absolutely. It's I like to say it's not that it's irrational, but it's supra-rational. It goes beyond, the rational.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is, I think about it from my own tradition, and in the Hebrew Bible, right, it talks about that, in the prophet Micah, the 3 things that God really asks from people. So to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. And I think it's that last thing where we can say, you know what, I really believe, I have faith in my tradition, I feel conviction and passion about it, but I also have to be humble, right? I have to be able to recognize that any human being is going to have limitations in her or his understanding of God.
Including me.
You're right, yeah, absolutely,
Right.
yeah. And that we have to, we have something to learn. An anecdote that I like to share with people is when we were doing the Comparative Religions Class at the Jewish high school I taught at, we took the students to a Japanese Buddhist temple. And there's a beautiful moment in their service where they sound this enormous bell, and there's this gong, and then it's just complete and utter silence afterwards. And it's very powerful. And a student afterwards, doing a reflection about it, said, now I finally understand, on the Jewish New Year of Rosh Hashanah, and they sound the ram's horn, right?
Yes, yeah.
It's not really about the sound of the ram's horn. It's called the shofar in Hebrew. It's not the sound of the shofar, it's the silence afterwards. And it was a fantastic moment where it was an encounter with another religious tradition that actually strengthened his understanding of his own. So I think one of the reasons that it's difficult sometimes to talk about religion is that people feel threatened, right? That somehow by engaging in this, I'll be challenging myself in some way that's threatening. And listen, we should all be challenging ourselves a little bit. I think that's important, but to also realize though, but actually you might end up walking away understanding your own tradition a little bit better.
Well, but that goes to that sort of thing about our faith, is sometimes maybe we don't understand our religion well enough.
Right. Yeah.
That there's if someone starts to poke a little bit, it becomes threatened, and nobody likes to feel threatened.
Right.
I mean,
right.
flight, fight, or freeze,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And nobody wants to have that experience, especially when you're talking about something as intimate as your faith in God
Yeah.
and religion and those types of things. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful story about that, isn't that? That's fantastic.
You know, it was a really, it was a powerful moment, and again, I think sort of like shook up some people's assumptions about what might happen in the encounter with a different religion.
Can I share a story?
Yeah,
This
please.
is one of my
My gosh,
favorites.
yeah.
So I was in college, and we were in a comparative religions course in college, and the professor took us to a Catholic a Benedictine monastery in Missouri, and these guys, full robes,
Right,
you know what I
right,
mean?
yeah.
Full. They were doing it. They were
Yeah.
working. It wasn't a cloister community, but they had a school on ground, but for the most part, they were right there in community. And so they invited us to dinner. And the dinner was kind of a salad bar setup. Mm-hmm. And I'm going through college, and when you go to a monastery, I don't know how your students reacted when they went to the Buddhist temple.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Did I use the right word? Correct me.
Yeah, I mean, it's called different things in different traditions.
right.
The community in general is referred to as a sangha. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I'm at the monastery, right? And I'm trying not to offend. You're trying to be very kind of open to this whole
Right,
experience.
absolutely.
And I'm not Catholic then. Okay, so I'm not Catholic there. I'm experiencing this on a whole new level. And they have cottage cheese and peaches. And I love cottage cheese and putting peaches on it, right?
Nice.
That's my favorite meal. But they have, that sneeze guard, and you got to bend the way under to get in there, right? So I get my
I've been there,
cottage
man. I've been
cheese
there,
in
yeah.
my bowl, and then I have to reach over to get my peaches, and I'm bringing my peaches over, and one peach falls off and lands in the community cottage cheese. And now I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. This monk right next to me, without even batting an eye, reaches over and grabs a spoon and scoops cottage cheese and peach out and puts it on his own plate.
Wow.
And at that moment, they said that they treat everyone that walks through that door as if it were Jesus. That's the Benedictine order, that component. And I saw that witness. He was so in tune to my own humiliation for being a clumsy oof, which I do every day. He cared about that.
There's just varying ranges of how many of us admit it.
So I had a whole nother experience at that day too. So. I just
so they leave deep impressions, right?
They do, and look, I'm old now, and I still remember that, and I still know what it felt like to be treated with such kindness and mercy over a stupid peach. What offense did I cause?
But you know what it is? It was a moment of vulnerability, right?
Yes.
And anytime you're vulnerable, there's like two options. Like people can like seize on that, right, in some harmful way, or they can protect you, right? So what he did is he protected you when you were vulnerable, which is extraordinary.
So I'm very grateful to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
We had a name for him. His name was Brother What a Waste. And I only say that because because there was girls in our class too. He was a handsome dude.
Oh, that's funny.
He was handsome. He was like 6'2".
That's funny. I get it now.
And he was very buff, you know what I mean? And here he was, this Benedictine monk, and all the ladies were like, oh, that's Brother What a Waste. That's what they called him.
That's fabulous.
That'll probably get me in trouble somewhere when I say that. We might have to edit that out, but anyway.
What can you do, man?
You can do.
Yeah.
So you grew up in California.
Yeah, out in California.
And the religious environment in California is non-religious, a-religious, everything religious, or nobody bothers to ask?
It's kind of everything religious, right? You have all different types, especially because the landscape is so diverse, right? So you have pockets of various types of communities, where you have Sikh communities and Jewish communities and enclaves of Catholic communities, and then you have, for the most, the country in general is not at this stage is not very religious, right? The largest growing religion in the United States is not religious, right?
The nuns. Yeah, the Pew Research calls them
exactly,
the nuns, right?
the nuns, and so California is an interesting place, where I think sometimes it's easy to confuse tolerance for not caring. Right? It's like on the surface, it's like, everybody kind of gets along and respects each other. But part of it is that people just don't care enough, right, about it to really get into it. And so I think one of the things that we also tried to do was sort of help people move past sort of like apathy, right? And we can both care about it, treat it seriously, and genuinely be respectful of diversity. Sure. But yeah, California was an interesting place in that way. I do think that one of the benefits, though, of that environment is that the starting place, the point of departure is one where there's an assumption that there will be differences. And that isn't always the case. Right? And that's a helpful thing.
So you have lived predominantly kind of in that environment where,
yes.
So growing up, I lived in Wyoming, and the community I lived in was predominantly Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
I went to a college in Oklahoma, which you're the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, so it's Protestant.
Yeah.
Then I moved to Tampa, Florida, where it was Tampa, Florida, which is the greatest city east of the Mississippi, by the way. And then moved to southeast Idaho.
Wow.
And the predominant religion here is LDS.
Right.
So there's that transition, right? So I guess what my point is there are pockets throughout our country, pockets throughout the world. Let's not pretend that this is just unique to the United States.
Right.
Where the culture is centered, or at least heavily influenced by a specific religion.
Yeah.
How does that play? How does that occur? And I have some theories, but my theories are useless because I'm not an expert on anything. Right. But how does that happen? I mean,
how does it happen in terms of how do enclaves come together, or?
Well, I mean, it happens because we tend to hang out with people who think like us.
Yes, it is very true.
And then we breed people who think like us.
Yes,
right. That's kind of what we do.
Right.
But I mean, now in this more global world where that isn't, I mean, we're not walking everywhere we go.
Right. Yeah.
And so the history of that, well, I'm just going to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, the Jewish is a very cultural religion.
Yeah, it kind of depends. There's a lot of different sort of expressions, like to look at the Pew Research, right? Again, what they figured out was that for most Jews, being Jewish has something to do with remembering the Holocaust, right? It has something to do with humor. It has something to do with food, right? For most, right? For many, it's still very much a religious identity, but for many, it's a cultural identity. And you have, of course, and this is true of any religion, right? It being shaped and influenced by where it popped up. So let me give you an example, right? So my own family were Sephardic Jews, meaning that we descended from the Jews that escaped the Inquisition from Spain and Portugal, right, in the Middle Ages. So we only represent about 20% of the Jewish community. We're very small. So we're not what you see depicted, right, usually like in popular media about sort of what Jewish is, certainly American Jewish. But you have a very distinct aesthetic, right? The way that we sing our liturgy, right? The languages that we speak, which are more Spanish and Arabic, as opposed to Yiddish, right? And other languages of the Ashkenazic Jews who are the majority, right? Coming from Eastern Europe. But you have sort of the influence of culture, right? It really shapes the religion. And that's another component which I think is helpful in a comparative religions course, is to sort of help people recognize that as absolute some of our beliefs rightfully are, right? About how we understand God, about how we understand our purpose in the world, et cetera.
So we call that doctrine?
We call it doctrine,
okay.
Right? We also have to recognize that, of course, it's influenced and shaped by the circumstances in which they emerged,
sure.
Right? They took shape, historical,
there you go.
Spinoza, right, who was a great Jewish philosopher and also heretic. He was thrown out of the community. In the
God bless heretics.
Yeah,
right? They make us all uncomfortable.
Absolutely, right? In the 1600s,
yes.
He talks about if a triangle were to think about God, to the triangle, God would be eminently triangular, right? And it's just about who we are and where we come from, and that's going to be the lens and the filter. Sure. So I, when it comes to comparative religion, I think that's a piece of it too, to recognize that we, again, should rightfully feel conviction about what we believe. At the same time, to recognize that there has been a role of history. There has been a role, of cultures that surrounded, so many of the laws, for example, in the Hebrew Bible deal with cattle and sheep and, and farming and agriculture. Right. If that text were given now, it would be about apartment buildings and cars, right? Because that is, it has to address, right, the reality of where things are at. And at the same time, somehow communicate timeless universal ideals, right? Which is quite a tightrope to walk. You know, I'm glad divinity was behind that, because I don't think I know how well a human could do that. And I believe in the divinity of religious texts, but I also believe that they're received through human filters,
Sure,
right? And
right.
that will be something we have the chance to talk about, you know, in the class.
That'd be fun too. So, oh my gosh.
No way, man.
Well, for the loyal listeners of this show, which I think right now we got 3 of them.
Yes. You know, my parents are going to start listening.
Yes,
so that's 2 more.
yes.
So it's great. Yeah.
Yes. I got to put my glasses on for this. Look, first of all, Devin, this was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I got to tell you, I wanted to talk to you about liturgy too. When you said that word, I was like, oh, I want to talk about liturgy.
Yeah.
Because liturgy is so important and it's so cultural.
Absolutely,
anyway,
yeah.
Well, our time is up, and Devin and I can't talk anymore about this today. So I hope as an audience you guys got something out of this conversation today. We didn't get any questions from the studio audience, so
sorry.
Either they were sleeping or they were heavily enthralled, and we were making some sort
I also
of sense.
think we talked too much.
Yeah, we talked. I know we were kind of, shut up, Devin, I'm trying to talk here. No.
My bad.
No, I'm the host, you know. Anyway, let's get this over with before I offend somebody else.
Right.
You can find us online at cetrain.isu.edu. We want you to go on. We want you to follow our blog. You want to look at our podcast, Sweet Talk. We're also on SoundCloud at Sweet Talk, which is CEWT.
By the way, total points for that play on words. I love that. That's fantastic.
You know, there's been an argument it should be Cute Talk.
No, stay with Sweet Talk. That's
okay.
my vote. For
And
whatever it's
so
worth.
let us know what you think. Interact with us, and thank you all for showing up today. Oh, yes, Paul.
Is there a way of contacting Devin? Do you have any social media presence? Or do you
I do actually.
Go ahead, get your plug.
So I'm on Instagram.
Yay!
So you can find me at Devin Maimo. So it's DevinMaimo. And also I have a blog online, thrivingtorah.com, which you can find just thoughts about Judaism for the most part and how it applies to daily life, but also about religion in general. So I welcome anybody to come and be a part of the conversation.
Okay. Devin, can we have you back on the show again someday?
It would be a pleasure.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, it'd be
All
good
right.
times.
All right, thank you guys. Sweet Talk, and thank you very much, Devin.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.